A strange noise sounded in this house's walls for 13 years. Then a repairman finally found the cause. For 13 years, an unusual sound haunted Jerry and Sylvia Lynn. At the same time every night, the strange noise emanated from the walls of their home in the township of Ross, Pennsylvania. And without fail, the bizarre vibrations escalated, resulting in a seemingly inexplicable din. Then, however, a repairman uncovered exactly what was causing the racket, and the source of the disturbance will come as a big surprise. But while the Lynn's home had something alarming lurking within the walls, that's definitely not the case for most houses, even if they make noises that can sound quite ghostly. And in fact, the sinister sounds you hear in your own abode almost certainly have rather banal explanations. The distinct screech of a creaking door is often used in horror movies, for instance, to build tension among the audience. However, in an average home, such a squeak is likely to be nothing more than an indication that a hinge is in need of some oil. And creaking floorboards can sound just as ominous, although this phenomenon is also easily explained. In essence, it's caused by friction that's created when different components of the flooring rub against each other. And although there's a little work involved in fixing the floorboards so that they don't groan every time you walk over them, this tends to be a problem that's easily solved. Other noises may not be so easily identifiable, though. If you hear a mysterious knocking in the attic, for instance, it might seem that the strange sound is coming out of the blue. Nevertheless, there's usually still a reasonable explanation. Even at first, you don't know precisely where the knocking's coming from or what's causing it. Yes, that racket coming from all the way up in the rafters is highly unlikely to be a disgruntled spirit haunting your attic. In fact, the noise is often not even concerning enough to call a DIY expert, let alone having a priest bless your house. For instance, when fall rolls around, you may turn your heating on for the first time since before summer. And as materials typically expand in the heat and contract when it's cold, the heating ducts may clang and clatter with the change in temperature. Similarly, the noise could be emanating from the radiators if there's a buildup of condensation in the central heating system. And it's likely reassuring to know that any odd vibration coming from this part of your house will probably have a sensible explanation. Conversely, similar sounds may ring out from the attic during the summer months. After all, this part of the house is subject to the same expansion and contraction principles as the central heating system. At this time of year, however, bizarre noises could signal movement from the shingles when the hot sunshine starts to beat down on the roof. Strange house sounds aren't limited to heating systems, mind you, as the water pipes can also sometimes be the source of a mysterious din. But if you can hear something resembling hammering coming from the walls, it could be that the pipes are experiencing a buildup in air pressure rather than anything more malevolent. If you're bothered by a bubbling and popping noise when all else is quiet in the house, it's possibly coming from the water heater. You see, when sediment accumulates in the tank, it will eventually sink to the bottom. And as the water increases in temperature, the residue will then move around in the heater and release trapped air. If you're constantly plagued by an annoying whistling noise, on the other hand, this could be coming from an AC system. For instance, if a filter needs cleaning, air may struggle to flow through the ducts. As a consequence, then, the unit may try to access the air it needs by working extra hard near the filter, and this creates a whistle. But the Lynn's mysterious noise couldn't be explained away by any of these common problems. And the din the bizarre phenomenon caused ultimately proved to be so unnerving that it even startled a number of visitors when they stopped by in the evenings. However, it seemed that the Lynn's themselves had grown used to the bizarre occurrence, even if it left their house guests on edge. After all, the couple had endured the noise during every evening they spent in their home from 2004. And it appeared to be becoming relatively commonplace for the pair. As Jerry explained to CNN in 2017, "It doesn't bother us," he told the network. "It's kind of cute." Yet, although Jerry may have found the noise sweet, 13 years is a long time for anyone to live with such an unusual sound. And if you think that 2004 doesn't seem like a very long time ago, we'll give you a bit of perspective about how much life has changed in the intervening years. Back in 2004, for instance, George W. Bush won his second term as president. Since then, Barack Obama has spent 2 terms in the White House, followed, of course, by Donald Trump's current tenure. And as of late 2019, the U.S. is currently into campaigning for the 2020 presidential elections, as Trump has already been commander-in-chief for close to 3 years. In 2004, though, the current president was little more than a businessman. Nevertheless, it was in that year that he became the host of The Apprentice, a reality TV show in which contestants vied for a placement at one of Trump's companies. And the series ultimately proved a hit, as it would go on to run for 15 seasons. Yet, while Trump was hosting The Apprentice, Americans were living in a world that was about to be transformed by social media. You see, Facebook was initially founded in 2004, although at first it only served a localized network of users. After the site opened up to the public use in 2006, however, it took off in a big way. In 2019, more than 2 billion people across the world reportedly now have Facebook profiles. Meanwhile, the ongoing war in Iraq dominated the news in 2004, a year into the conflict, which would last for nearly a decade. There were regular reports of attacks on U.S. military. Power in the country would eventually be handed to an interim government, while Iraq's former ruler, Saddam Hussein, would go on to stand trial for war crimes. In the world of sport, Greece's capital, Athens, hosted the 2004 Olympic Games. This was the 28th edition of the event, and it was the first time that the city had hosted the competition since the modern-day game's inception in 1896. 4 billion people are believed to have tuned in for the symbolic lighting of the Olympic flame. Back in the United States, the biggest sporting event of the year, the Super Bowl, was fought between the New England Patriots and the Carolina Panthers. But it was Justin Timberlake's halftime performance that arguably caused the biggest stir, when he seemingly indecently exposed guest performer Janet Jackson. The incident was later described as a wardrobe malfunction, a phrase that's now become part of popular culture. Yet while the world has changed immeasurably in the 13 years following 2004, one part of the Lynn couple's home remained perplexingly the same. Yes, during all that time, the strange sound in Jerry and Sylvia's wall continued to ring out every night without fail. And according to Sylvia's estimations, the haunting noise echoed through the Lynn's home for just short of a minute each evening. To put this in context, if a cacophony had been continual, it would have lasted for a staggering total of 3 days. Yet, while hearing the same unexplained commotion every evening may drive some to despair, the Lynns apparently accepted the strange occurrence. Still, while they knew exactly when the din would begin, perhaps they continued to hope that each time would be the last. And when the pair finally found out the source of the sound, solving the mystery may therefore have been rather bittersweet. What's more, the phenomenon had its origins all the way back in September 2004. During that month, Jerry was connecting a TV wire and realized that the best way to do so successfully was to punch a hole in the wall. But how would he know where to drill? Well, he came up with an ingenious method to find the correct spot so that the connection lined up perfectly. Yes, Jerry had the idea of lowering an object into the wall cavity to help him identify a safe spot to drill through. The Pennsylvania man therefore tied an item to a length of string before inserting it into the relevant space via the upstairs air vent. Of course, though, Jerry wouldn't actually be able to see the object dangling from a length of string behind the wall, so rather cleverly, he selected something that could be counted on to make a noise, allowing him to pinpoint the location at which he should drill for the TV cable. More specifically, he used a trusty alarm clock. So Jerry set the alarm to go off after 10 minutes, giving him enough time to both lower the clock to where he needed to drill and to himself move into position in the living room. He subsequently tied the timepiece to a length of string and lowered it down the air vent on the second floor. Yet while the plan was sensible enough, it started to unravel when Jerry heard a noise that he wasn't expecting. And although the Pennsylvania native knew exactly what had happened, he couldn't possibly have known just how long he and his wife would live with the mishap. After all, it went on to haunt the Lynns for 13 long years. You see, as Jerry was lowering the clock through the vent and between the walls, he heard a distinct thudding sound. Yes, the clock had become detached from the string, after which it had plummeted to the floor below. Initially, though, Jerry was unflustered by his mistake. "It's not all that bad an idea," Jerry explained to CNN in 2017. "It's still going to go off." Indeed, given that the alarm clock was battery operated rather than plugged into the mains, he would still have the audible cue that he was looking for. And while the alarm clock proved irretrievable, Jerry reckons that the power would die before too long. In any case, he didn't expect it to last for more than a few months. That was in September 2004, he told KDKA in 2017. Cut to 13 years later, though, and the battery was still going strong. The clock is still going off every day, Jerry explained, and during daylight savings time it goes off at 10 minutes till 8. During standard time, it goes off at 10 minutes to 7 at night. So while the Lynns may have hoped that each night would be the last, that wasn't to be. Eventually then the couple became accustomed to the alarm going off on the wall every night. It starts with a soft beep 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 beep, and it gets louder and closer together, Sylvia told KDKA. But although she and her husband grew strangely fond of the din over time, it often left visitors startled. "We don't even notice it because we're so used to it," Jerry told CNN. "It's more of a conversation piece when guests come over." So perhaps owing to his and his wife's nonchalant attitude toward their everyday alarm call, they had no intention of calling anyone in to retrieve the clock. Nonetheless, when contractors Don Michelucci and Keith Andreen from local firm Low Cost Heating and Air caught the Lynns' tale on the news, they wanted to help. And in time, the pair paid Jerry and Sylvia a visit too. But after 13 years, could Jerry even remember what style of clock Keith and Dawn should be looking for? Well, following no small amount of effort, Dawn finally spotted the long-lost item. "I see a clock with vibrant numbers stuck on a wire," she declared as the KDKA news channel filmed the operation. And after 13 years in the wall cavity, it took only minutes to retrieve the clock through a vent in the garage. "This is the first time, no pun intended, that I had to remove a clock from inside ductwork," Keith explains to KDKA. And even though the battery had corroded, it was still healthy enough to power the clock. That was despite the fact that the timepiece had already been old back in 2004. The longevity of the battery perhaps stands as good publicity then. For its manufacturer, Rayovac. Indeed, Jerry had no memory of ever replacing the power source inside the clock before he dropped the item. By contrast, though, the Pennsylvania native's recollection of what the clock looked like turned out to be pretty accurate. "It's a travel alarm, I was right on that," Jerry told KDKA, "and it's digital. I was right on that. It's just the style I was wrong on." Perhaps the daily alarm had served as a haunting reminder of the clock, a vision that may have been etched into Jerry's mind's eye. Nevertheless, with the daily ringing finally eliminated, Jerry looked back on his DIY plan with a certain amount of pride. It wasn't that it wasn't a good idea, he told CNN, it just didn't have a good execution. And since the rescue effort, the Lynns have planned to give the alarm clock a prominent place in their home, although perhaps they should keep it away from the walls.